In today's episode of Pinoy Nurse Portal, I'm going to share some tips on how to survive the first month of becoming a USRN. Because let's face it, the first month is going to be the intimidating, scary, and confusing stage of becoming a USRN. So if you believe that knowledge is power, you came to the right place. Hello, this is your nurse Rebecca for Pinoy Nurse Portal. So without further ado, let's go get right into it. Of all the things that I am going to share, I think this is the hardest part because Filipinos are known to be either passive or aggressive. Yung nagkikim-kim tayo, we let it boil and then we explode. In the United States, people here are very assertive. So number one tip I'm going to share is be assertive. So Nurse Rebecca, how am I going to be assertive? Number one, learn to say no. Start now, okay? Learn to say no. There's no harm in saying no, especially if you say it nicely. For example, you are busy, you are passing by, you're about to get some supplies for your patient, and one of the nurses poke her head out the door and say, "Hey Rebecca, can you please grab me a syringe?" But you are busy, you were about to do something that's more important than a syringe. It's okay to say no. You could say, "I'm sorry Minerva," or "I'm sorry nurse so-and-so, I'm about to do this. My patient needs this." Okay? Learn to say no. They will not take it against you because you are also busy. Plus, a syringe may not be as important as what you are about to do. Number two tip in becoming assertive is practice. Think of something that happened in the past that you felt like you were not so assertive in that situation. Use that situation and practice it in your head. Practice it in front of the mirror. And number three is start small. Parang ganun lang, start small. Learn by saying no to siguro sa grocery store, or maybe practice in saying no to your children, to your husband, or from someone that's borrowing money from you. Doon sa mga nangungutang sa'yo, you have to say no. Especially kung wala ka namang ipapautang. It's okay to say no. If they will hate you for saying no, then that's their loss. It's not yours. But in the end, you are practicing to become more assertive. Okay? Tip number two in surviving the first month of being a USRN, learn to delegate. This is something that was also hard in my part, especially here that they speak English. Sometimes instead of just talking to them in English, ako na lang kasi nahiya ako because my English is not good. That was my case when I first came here. But you know what? When I talked to the manager, my manager, when I first came here, I told her it's hard to speak English. But she asked me, do they understand you? Do the people you talk to understand you? And I said, yes. And she said, that's what's important. Your grammar doesn't have to be perfect. As long as they understand what you're trying to say, then that's okay. True story. I was assisting a doctor with the dressing change at the bedside, and I needed help to scoot up the patient after the dressing change. I was so surprised because the doctor offered to scoot the patient up in the bed. So Philippines, they don't do that. I'm sorry, but most of the doctors in the Philippines have superiority complex. Over here, the patient is the most important part of the hospital. That's why the doctor, na-confused talaga ako. So I told the doctor, no, it's okay. I can ask someone. No, it's okay. Let's scoot the patient up. From then on, I realized that everybody that's involved in the care of the patient is really involved in the care. So it doesn't matter if it's a PA, nurse practitioner, or a doctor, or a specialist physical therapist. If they are in the room and you need help to take care of the patient, you can ask them for help. Next, learn the policies and protocols in your hospital. Policies and protocols are different from hospitals to hospitals. There might be some similarities, but they are not the same. So, what are policies and protocols? Policies and protocols will help you do the right thing in any given situation. For example, your patient will start a heparin drip. Okay, so you have to look at your policy and your protocol in your unit how to give the heparin drip. You don't have to memorize everything. Once you come to the United States, you will have a lot of resources. So nursing responsibility with regards to your policies and protocols, Ask your preceptor where to find them. Some hospitals will have a big binder for their protocols and policies. Some hospitals like ours, we have it in our website. It's so easy. It's just one click away. Another example of protocol, let's say it's your first time to pull out a PIC line. How will you do it? Let's say you don't know how to pull out a central line or a PIC line. So refer to the policy in your hospital, okay? Don't do anything without referring to the policy, especially if it's your first time to do it. Huwag maggagaling-galingan, otherwise mako-compromise ang safety ng patient ninyo. Next, you have to know the chain of command in your unit. And why do you have to know that? That way, you know who to escalate a problem to. For example, your patient wants to talk to the supervisor because the patient is not happy with his care. So the patient said, "Hey, Nurse Rebecca, can I talk to your supervisor? I just want to talk to the supervisor." Okay, fine. You want to talk to the supervisor. But knowing your chain of command, for example, in our hospital, the chain of command, ako, staff nurse, charge nurse, nurse manager, nurse supervisor, and then the director, HR, and then pataas yan. So, if the patient wants to talk to the supervisor, binaypas niya yung charge nurse and the manager. So, what will you do as a nurse? You have to explain it to the patient. So, I will tell the patient, "Excuse me, Mr. Smith, I know you want to talk to my supervisor, but is it okay if I have my charge nurse talk to you first? I just want to follow the chain of command," something like that. But if the patient insists on saying that, "No, I don't want to talk to your charge nurse. I want to talk to the supervisor. I'm not very happy with my care." So what will you do? Nursing responsibility, tell your charge nurse about it. So in the United States, we address our charge nurse, kahit supervisor, even the director, on a first name basis. Let's say, for example, your charge nurse is Juan. You say, "Hey, Juan, the patient wants to talk to the supervisor. I already told him, I already offered to have him talk to you first before the supervisor, but he is insisting on talking to the supervisor. Is it okay if I call the supervisor now?" Your charge nurse, it depends on her or his discretion. He may or may not want to call the supervisor first. He may want to talk to the patient himself, but at least you did your part as the bedside nurse. You followed the chain of command. Next, you have to know the basic charting in your unit. I know, guys, I know as a nurse that you do a lot of charting, but what do I mean by basic charting? This is the charting that will not waste your time. If your charting is charting by exception, when you write WDL or within normal limits, you don't have to write anything below that. For example, the GI or the respiratory system is within normal limits. You don't have to put the breath sounds of the patient because you wrote WDL or within normal limits because the breath sounds are clear. Not unless if you heard something extraordinary, not extra. If you heard something abnormal doon sa lung sounds ng patient mo, that's the time you put not within normal limits, okay? I want you to learn to chart smartly. Don't waste your time by charting not necessary things, okay? Because you will end up going home late every night or every morning. For example, we work in the burn unit. I's and O's are very important. The food they eat is very important. When we pick up the trays of our patient, we have to take note of how much they ate, if it's 50% or 100%, because nutrition is very important with burn patients. Wound dressing is very important. We do a lot of wound care in our unit. So whether we do the dressing or not during our shift is important, and it's expected for us to chart the dressing of the patient. So my point is, wherever unit you will work at, know the basic charting that you have to finish in a shift, because let's face it, charting cannot be handed over to the next shift. You can hand a task. For example, you did not have time to insert an NG or a Foley, you can hand that over to the next shift. That's why nursing is a 24-hour shift, because you can hand some task over to the next shift, except for your charting. Next, memorize the numbers. What do I mean by numbers? I don't mean math. You have to memorize the number for your code team, or how to call, tama ba? Call for a code and call rapid response. In the United States, we do have rapid response. I don't know in your country, I don't know in the Philippines kung meron na kayong rapid response dyan. But when you come over here, every hospital will have a rapid response team. It is binubuo ng RT, ICU nurse, ng doctors, ano pa ba? Basta madami, the supervisor. So when you call rapid response overhead, they will come to the floor. So when do you call rapid response? If you feel in your gut that the patient is unstable, you feel that the patient will crash anytime soon, that's the time you call rapid response, okay? Next, learn the terms they use in the hospitals. There will be a lot, but this is the term that I need you to understand and know the nursing responsibility of. Okay, the word NINP, what does it stand for? It stands for no information, no publicity. So what does it mean to you as nurses? It means you cannot divulge any information regarding the patient. And when does the patient becomes NINP? For inmate or prisoner patients, automatic, they are NINP. You cannot divulge information to anybody not involved in their care. For example, someone calls on the phone asking for that patient who happens to be an inmate slash prisoner. What will you tell them? You cannot tell them any information. You have to say, I'm sorry, we don't have that patient over here. But let's say, for example, the person on the line is persistent. What will you do? Well, be persistent in saying, no, I'm sorry, I don't have this person on our floor. If you want, I can transfer you to the operator. And don't worry, if you transfer the call to the operator will have the NINP sign in their dashboard, so they will not divulge any information. So when you come to the United States, I want you to pay attention to NINP patients, okay? So remember, all inmates, all prisoners are automatic NINP. So who else are NINP patients? Patients can choose to become NINP, okay? They could tell you, I don't want anybody to know that I'm here. So it's important that you call the registration or tell your secretary, if you have a unit secretary, that this patient chose to become NINP. So every time somebody will call, you are not allowed to give them information. So let's say, for example, the patient is NINP and somebody called. When can you give information to that caller? Okay, so for every NINP patients except the prisoners, they will have a code. It could be a word or it could be a number or set of numbers. The patient responsibility is to give that code or code word or code number to the people they want to share information to. Next, DNR and DNI. I know you know what it means. We learned this in school, but in the Philippines, I've never met someone who came to the hospital and said that they want to be DNR or DNI. Over here, you will meet a lot of patients who wants to be DNR or DNI or both. So nursing responsibility, when getting a report, make sure that you know the code status of the patient, because what does it mean to you guys? Let's say, for the example, your patient is crashing, okay, and the patient is DNR and DNI, and you call the code because you want to be the superhero, you want to save the patient. Nako, DNR and DNI yung patient, you call the code, nako, patay ka dyan. Lahat ng gagastusin dun sa code, pati yung pagtawag ng code, baka i-charge sa atin. It never happened pa naman sa history na nasa hospital ako, because it's really important that you know the code status of the patient, okay? So nursing responsibility before calling a code, before calling rapid, well, you could call rapid response for the patient, but not a code for the patient, okay? So, nursing responsibility, kailangan meron silang purple bracelet. In our hospital and all the hospitals that I've worked, DNR and DNI bracelets are purple. So, let's say, for example, the patient wants to be DNI, but not DNR. So, the patient wants to be intubated, but doesn't want to be DNR, okay? So, you can intubate the patient but not DNR. Sometimes it's confusing, but you will meet some patients like that. Okay, so nursing responsibility, know the code status of your patient and make sure you have a bracelet. Let's say, for example, they want to be both. Make sure you have the DNR, DNI written in their bracelet. Or they only want DNR, just put DNR. Or if they only want DNI, just write DNI. Okay? Next, you have to know where the code card is. I'm sure your preceptor will show you where it is, but it's your nursing responsibility to know where your code card is, and you know how long the battery will last when it's unplugged. I'm talking about the defibrillator. True story. We had a patient, she was about to crash. Well, not yet. Her heart rate was in the 120s and her blood pressure was soft like in the 90s. Over here, kapag mababa ang blood pressure ng patient ninyo, they refer it as soft blood pressure. So the blood pressure was soft and the patient was tachycardic and the patient was becoming a little more confused. So if you are the nurse, I was the charge nurse that night. So what I did was I unplugged the ZOL, the defibrillator, okay, and pushed the code card in front of the patient's room, okay? This was about 7:30 in the evening. We did not code the patient until 2 o'clock. So we waited, ganyan. So nursing responsibility, did you know that if your defibrillator is ZOL, Z-O-L-L, the battery could only last for 4 hours? So nursing responsibility, if you pull the crash cart out of the plug system and you bring it to the patient's room, plug it, okay? Next, calling the doctor. Tip from Nurse Rebecca, don't be shy, don't be scared, don't be intimidated when calling the doctor. Because when that doctor wrote his order, was he shy? Was he intimidated? Was he scared when he ordered that 3 units of blood for you, that Foley cut insertion, that FlexiSeal insertion, that NGT insertion? No, hindi siya nahiya. He wasn't scared. He wasn't intimidated because that is needed for the care of the patient. I want you to think that way also. When calling the doctor, don't be shy, okay? Because you're doing it for the patient. Just make sure you have the chart open. You know the data. You know the history of the patient. Basically, you know everything about the patient. Okay, the last one. I have so much more to share, but this vlog is already long. This is about writing up. Okay, when do you write up? If there are mistakes na nangyari sa floor ninyo and in your career as a nurse, you will also be written up. If that will happen, remember that write-ups are not punitive. It's not meant to punish you. It's meant for learning. Okay, that way it will not happen again. Nako, napakadami ng beses I've been written up many times. If you get written up, don't take it personally, okay? Take it as a learning process. Tama ba? Learning process, and just don't do it again. And don't be scared to write something up or write someone up because like I said, it's not punitive. It's to improve the care and safety doon sa unit ninyo para sa safety ng patients ninyo. And there you have it, guys. I hope you learned something from today's episode of Pinoy Nurse Portal. And remember, if you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And don't forget to follow me on my socials, Facebook, Instagram over here. And I have another YouTube channel, which is a personal channel. Ilalagay ko yung link here and it's on the description down below. Thank you so much for watching. Medyo paus na ako. Comment down below what topics you want me to discuss on our next vlog. See you. Please be safe out there.